a history book with pages to fill. If you haven't found your voice, I know you will. You don't need to let the rain clouds underneath your skin. Love sings louder than the darkness. Let the light shine in. I know you.
Hello and welcome to the Goldberry Artisans podcast. My name is Emily and I'm here to chat with you about all things knitting and wool and crafting. I'm coming to you from outside of my home here in Maine on this beautiful fall day. And welcome to everyone, wherever you're coming from, whoever you are most welcome here. Thank you for joining me to talk a little bit about knitting, which is hopefully something we all love. If you're here and you don't love knitting, I'd have to wonder how you wound up here, but you're welcome anyway. So today is October 5th. Who knows when this will actually get uploaded. I'm hoping the road noise won't be too bad. There's not always a whole lot going on in my town where I live, but there's normally traffic, so I apologize if that's too loud. I am so glad that I am able to record a podcast today and that it's still nice enough to record outside. It's definitely my favorite way to record is to come outside, but I live in Maine. It does not work well in the winter. So thank you for coming back to join me. I have a different job. I talked about this last time, but in case you missed my last episode, so that I started back in January. So podcasting, as I said last time, it's going to be kind of a hit or miss thing. No idea when I'll get time to record. I'm an accountant, so there's different seasons that will be busier than others. So this is probably the last time I'll mention it. I'm not going to apologize for not uploading a lot, just because I do this for fun, and I want it to be fun, and so I do it when I can. So I have several things to talk with you about today. Don't really have a plan, I just chucked all my knitting in a basket and came outside. So I've got a couple of finished objects, I've got some work in progress, and I have a project that I'm going to frog that we will talk about. So let's jump in with finished objects. I have one that has been finished, ends woven in, blocked, and worn. So it's like actually completely finished. And that is, I've just kind of been calling this my Anne of Green Gables wrap. It's been a while since I finished it, so I was blanking on the actual pattern name. The pattern name is Seaworthy by Erin of Remade by Hand. And the yarn I used, this white color, kind of creamy color, is by Lichen and Lace. I forget what base it is, but it's her linen colorway. And then most of the other colors are from the Anne of Green Gables mini skein set, dyed by 6 and 7 Fiber, Rachel over at 6 and 7 Fiber. The only ones that are not Anne colorways, like the Anne of Green Gables colorways, are this teal one right here. This was left over from some yarn, like a mini skein that was given to me. And then, so I don't know what yarn that teal one is. And then these two, it's kind of like a khaki greeny kind of color, like an olive green, and then kind of a blue and cream colorway. These are left over from mini skeins from Legacy Fiber Arts. I bought their 12 Skeins of Christmas mini set last year. I used most of the minis in a sweater for my younger sister, but I had these two left over. So I thought they fit in really nicely. So for the colors, I kind of went from like the most vibrant and bright. This section just like screams fall to me. I think these are my favorite, like this is my favorite combination. So I kind of went from the vibrant and darker colors into the lighter colors, and then I ended it, I used the blue and the green that were in the beginning again, which is nice because the way, like it's like the pattern, it's called a wrap. You could wear it however you wanted, but the way that I've worn it is like a traditional scarf. So because I used the colors again, it kind of brings a nice continuity to the shawl or to the wrap when I wear it. So then obviously like the purple's not here and they're different sizes, but you get the blue and the green repeated again on the end, which I really like. I absolutely love this wrap. I've worn it multiple times. I've always gotten, people always compliment me on it when I wear it. And it's a nice, lightweight scarf, while still, like it's still nice and long, it's very nice and drapey. It's a substantial wrap without being something that's mainly to keep you warm in the winter. I have plenty of those. And it's, I've, over the past year, maybe 2 years, I've mainly been knitting shawls. I've knit hardly any scarves. But then knitting this, I remembered how much I like knitting scarves, as long as they have something interesting. Because what often gets me with a scarf is that if it's just the same couple row repeat over and over again for like 5 or 6 feet, I will never finish it. But with this, you're alternating between like a really easy mesh stitch here, and then you get to pull in the different colors. The pattern is originally written for 3 colors, but Erin provides, once you've purchased the pattern, you can go onto our website and you can access some different worksheets that help you figure out how much yarn to use, or like how much yarn every one of these sections, like every one of these color sections, she tells you how many grams of yarn each one takes to knit, so then you can plan it out. So like I use mini skeins, or maybe if you have 4 colors or 5 colors you want to use, or if you want all of these sections to be different colors, then you can also plan that out, which is so incredibly helpful. So I will definitely be knitting more of Erin's patterns in the future and utilizing the worksheets and everything that she provides, so I can kind of use some leftover yarns and mix them together so that I know that I will have enough yarn. And I did have some left of every color, even the ones that got used again on this side. I'm thinking I may make some scrappy socks with those, or I may put them into my Cozy Memories blanket. I haven't decided yet. So, but yeah, so I was saying that I was remembering that I like, I can knit scarves. I like knitting scarves. Then I went to block it, and I remembered why I don't always knit scarves. Oh my goodness. I didn't have enough blocking mats. So I still live with my family, my parents and my siblings, but I have my own room. So I have bunk beds in there, because when I was younger we shared rooms. So I had this in the top bunk. So I had all my blocking mats laid out. The problem is that it was too wide for one blocking mat. So I had to have like 2 blocking mats next to each other. I only have 9 blocking mats. That was not going to work. Like 9, they're probably like a foot each way. So I was pulling in like plastic bags and just random like just a bunch of plastic bags to put underneath it so that I could lay it out. It just barely fit like lengthwise on the bunk bed. Definitely poke the mattress with the blocking pins. So if I'm going to knit more scarves, I definitely need to invest in some like blocking wires that people use a lot of times for things like scarves or things that are really lacy, so that really need to be blocked but can be a pain to get blocked. So I definitely will need to invest in some blocking wires if I make another scarf, because I'm not doing that again. it turned out wonderfully, but it was a pain. So that is my Anne Shirley wrap. I like to, sometimes I'll give my patterns different names. Not always, not every time, but sometimes. So that is my Anne wrap. My next, I think, last finished object was part of a mystery knit along that is now done. It was the Spoondrift Shawl Knit Along by Alicia Plummer, who lives in Maine. And I knit this out of yarn from the Angora Moose. The colorway is Peter's Coat, as in Peter Rabbit. And it's naturally dyed with indigo. So with this mystery knit along, it was based on the ocean. So every clue came out with a paragraph talking about a different aspect of the ocean and what you often see at the beach. So every one of these sections had kind of a short little story that went along with it, which was so fun. And it was nice because it alternated between some easier sections like this, some garter and stockinette ridges, and then this was definitely the hardest section to knit. And honestly, it reminds me more of a crochet stitch pattern than a knitted stitch pattern. So that part definitely took me the longest. I actually didn't have enough yarn to do the complete shawl. The last clue was another repeated section of the garter and stockinette stitch sections to go on the bottom here. But I knit one of the garter stitch sections and realized that I was not going to have enough yarn. Actually, I think it was like alternating garter with like a simple, like a lace pattern, like something like this. But I didn't have enough yarn. So I just ripped out the row that I had done and bound off. So I don't think that I think that it still looks complete. It doesn't look like I ran out of yarn, even though I did. So I love how this came out. I did not alternate skeins, which is always what you should do with hand-dyed yarns. You should always swatch for everything and always alternate hand-dyed yarns. I didn't either, hence running out of yarn. But I don't really think you can tell where I switched skeins, which is good. I was kind of afraid you would be able to. Where did I switch? Here. So like this last, this part was knit in a different skein. Which shows you that I can get this far in the shawl, like with one skein, and then this much was a whole skein of yarn. Fingering weight yarn. So yeah, I love this. Nice and summery. It'll remind me of the ocean, even in the middle of the winter. So that was a really fun, I didn't really by didn't really, I mean not at all, did I interact in the Ravelry threads that Alicia had open. If I ever participate in a knit along, there's like a 10% chance I'll actually post something, and it's normally a beginning picture or a finished object picture, sometimes both. It's just not something I'm good at doing. So that is my Spoondrift shawl mystery knit along. That's the second time I've done a mystery knit along. So they are fun. They're hard because I would feel like I was behind when I was behind on a clue, and that was a little stressful. But I get it done. That is all I have for finished objects. Nope, I have one more. These were just some socks that I had kind of on the needles. It's the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's super popular. Just kind of a simple stitch pattern with some purl bumps to mix it up a little bit. I totally spaced. I knit the first sock. I cast these on before my sister and I went on a trip to New York City, and I worked them on 9-inch circular needles. Somehow in the airport, while we were waiting for our delayed plane, I managed to turn the heel flap and gusset on my 9-inch circular. Don't ask me how. I never want to do it again. I don't know how I did it. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and I was exhausted, and I just wanted to keep knitting. So I turned the heel flap and gusset because I'd forgotten to bring, well, no, I hadn't forgotten. We were flying, so I didn't want to bring a whole lot of stuff with me. It was a really quick trip, so I didn't have any double pointed needles with me, which is what I normally do. I've had my 9-inch circular for several months now, and I like using it, but I do go back to double pointed needles to knit like the heel and the toe, but not on the first sock. The yarn, oh goodness, it's a Blue Moon Fiber Arts. I believe it's their Socks That Rock base. Don't remember the colorway. But so I said that I was working these on 9-inch circulars, which I like using, but I think what I've discovered is that I like using them for just plain vanilla socks. If there's any sort of stitch pattern involved, I don't like them as much because you don't have as much flexibility because they're so small. You don't have as much flexibility in moving them. Like if I'm using double pointed needles, I can move it if I need to do a knit two together or a slip knit or anything like that. But the 9-inch circulars don't offer that quite as much. So I really love using them for vanilla socks and for sweater sleeves. So these socks have been languishing for quite some time. And so I thought, okay, well maybe if I switch to doing it on double pointed needles, I'll get it done faster. Which was true. But apparently I knit tighter on 9-inch circulars than double pointed needles, which I did not think about. So one of the socks ended up like 3/4 of an inch longer than the other one. But that's okay. One of my feet is like ever so slightly larger than the other one, so it's fine. Yeah, I love this colorway too. And it's a slightly thicker yarn. Like it's a heavier fingering weight yarn, and it's very tightly spun. So I'm hoping that that will be perfect for some nice, super warm socks to wear. Again, in Maine, it's getting cold. You think about these things. So that really is my last finished object. I have another pair of socks that is almost done. So close. So this is a pair of vanilla socks that I am knitting out of Valkyrie Fibers. It doesn't say. Oh, wrong tag. Ha! Found it. Valkyrie Fibers matte sock base, which is 75/25 merino nylon, superwash merino, and it's from her Middle Earth colorways, and it's her Eowyn color. And I believe I mentioned last time that I cast these on while I was re-listening to the third book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I did finish that. So, still working on the socks. I'm gonna have a lot of yarn left, so I may try to make some shorty socks as well. So because of this striping, the self-striping yarn, I knit these in a tube, and I marked in where I'm going to cut in and do an afterthought heel. So I have already done that on this sock. It did turn out a bit short. I will still wear them anyway. So I've only done an afterthought heel a couple of times, so I'm still trying to figure out the placement of it. I counted how many rows I had done on the last sock when I did an afterthought heel and did about the same on this, but it still ended up a little short. So, let's see. I'm still I don't have any one particular way that I always knit socks, or I don't always do the same kind of cuff or heel or toe or anything. So, just gonna make that up as I go. So I did the heel on this one, and I need to cut in and do the heel on this sock. I did, maybe next time I do socks like this, like vanilla socks, something that I've seen Louise Tilbrook do. She's on Instagram and she has patterns on Ravelry. She's a knitwear designer, but what she will do sometimes with socks is to knit one giant tube, which I did for a pair of scrappy socks that I knit earlier this year, and then cut it in half, do the toes, and then cut in for the afterthought heels. I had thought about doing it, but I wanted the stripes to match up for these, which they do. It's like the best I've ever had stripes match. It's amazing. So yeah, all I have left to do is to cut in that heel. Oh, I was going to mention the toe that I've done other times when I've done the afterthought heel, and I like this toe in general just because of how easy it is. It's a whirlpool toe. No, I did a whirlpool toe in these socks too. But I'm wearing a pair of socks. I'll hold them up for comparison. I feel like I've done this before, but you know, I'll say it again. So a traditional sock toe is more of like a wedge toe, where you're decreasing 4 stitches every other round till you get down normally to like 16 to 20 stitches, and then you Kitchener stitch the top together, which is totally fine. But what I will sometimes do, just because it avoids Kitchener stitch, I'm totally fine with doing it. It just means I actually have to like go and find my tapestry needle and actually do it. But what I did on these ones was a whirlpool toe, where I remember hearing somebody explain it and it didn't make sense to me until I actually did it. I'll try to explain. Or basically, you divide it up like if you have 64 stitches, what you could do is you knit 6 stitches, knit 2 together, do that all the way around. Then you knit 6 rounds. Then you do a round of knit 5, knit 2 together, all the way around, knit 5 rounds. You keep doing that, doing 1 less stitch in between your knit 2 togethers until you're doing knit 2 together all the way around, and then you're closing off the top like you would a hat or a mitten. So instead of having a more flat section here with Kitchener stitch, it's just all pulled together like that. The reason that I like to do this if I'm doing an afterthought heel is so that if the placement of the heel is slightly off, it doesn't really make a difference, because the toe can, like, there's not a front, back, and side to the toe. Like, it's the same thing all the way around. So I like to do the whirlpool toe for ease of knitting it, and it's very good with afterthought heels. Let's keep the sock train going. I'm knitting another sock. Surprise! This is actually a test knit for Melanie of the Braid and Tinker podcast. These are the Melanie, I hope I don't say it wrong, the Odalie Socks. The pattern is going to be released on October 10th, so very soon. So I'm a little over halfway done with the first sock. And these socks have such a fun stitch pattern. It's cables, but you can do it. Melanie explains how to do it in the pattern, and you use like two, you can use a cable needle or a double pointed needle, or you can use a locking stitch markers. I don't think I brought any out with me. Oh yes. So you can put the stitches onto that, which I never would have thought of doing for cabling, but it works. So you can use a stitch marker like this. So you can see it. And you can just, this one has some beads on it for decoration, so obviously I wouldn't use this one. But you slide the stitch onto that and hold onto it while you're knitting, and then you carry it over and do the cable. So it's a very addicting stitch pattern. So you do that, and then you have 3 pretty much rest rows in between. So it's nice, it's engaging, but it's not really complicated. I did 1 repeat, and I haven't had to refer to the stitch pattern since. It makes a lot of sense once you start doing it. So I am having so much fun knitting these socks, and I love this color. Like it matches the great outdoors. The yarn is from Little Skein Anne. It is one of her, she has like an Anne of Green Gables mystery skein club, so I did it for 1 month. And so this is her Green Gables colorway. So I'm having a lot of fun using that in these socks. I've only recently actually started to use hand-dyed yarn in socks. For a long time it was the kind of thing that I didn't have a lot of hand-dyed yarn, and so I wanted to use it in something like a shawl or a hat where you could see it. But lately I've been enjoying putting it into a pair of socks, especially since I figured out that I don't really wear one skein shawls, so unless I have other skeins of yarn that coordinate really well with it, I am more likely to actually wear and use the yarn if I put it into a pair of socks versus a one skein shawl. Yeah, I'm just having so much fun knitting on these. I love them. And I know when I first started watching podcasts, I was not in a financial place to buy a lot of hand-dyed yarns, so I don't ever want anyone to feel bad that if they don't knit with hand-dyed yarns. I knit a lot with things that are not hand-dyed yarns. Right now, I have a surplus, so I'm able to use a lot of them. If you want some tips on how to find and use, like how to find hand-dyed yarns or some ideas for getting them for less money, I will link in the show notes down below to a podcast episode where I talk about that quite a bit. And that's what I do for most of those are tips and tricks that I use to get most of my hand-dyed yarns. In this case, Anne is a wonderful human being, and I love Anne of Green Gables, and so I wanted to support her in her shop by buying this yarn. And one thing that Anne has that I think is really cool is yarn sponsorships, where people can give money. If they have extra money, they can give it towards this sponsorship, and then people can apply to be able to have a skein of Anne's yarn without paying the full amount. Because it's so hard, because $28, it has to be that much money. The work and love that goes into a skein of hand-dyed yarn is a lot. But I also know that that's not accessible to everyone. So if you're interested in Anne's yarn in general, or giving money to the sponsorship fund, or applying to be able to use the sponsorship fund, I encourage you to go check that out. I'll just put a link to that page on her website down below. And her yarn is gorgeous. I have one more work in progress. It's a little tangled up. It looks a little messy right now, but bear with me. This is the Bravura Pullover, or Bravura? Wow, this is a day of not knowing how to say things. Pullover by Beatrice Perrin-Dolan, another fabulous Maine knitwear designer. This is a relatively new pattern, and as soon as I saw her post pictures of it, I knew I just wanted to make it. So you know how earlier I talked about how I did not, alternate hand-dyed skeins in that shawl like you're supposed to do? I also did not do a gauge swatch, because I was at a point where I didn't have a garment actively on the needles, and I really wanted one. So I just cast on. And it's DK weight, so I knew that if I got going and realized it wouldn't fit, it would be easy to rip it back. I wouldn't feel as bad because it's DK weight, so it's a little bit heavier than like a fingering weight. It knits up faster. So this this pattern is written to use up single skeins and mini skeins and leftover yarns. So at first, I really wanted to make it, but I was thinking I pretty much only have fingering weight yarn. I have a couple odd skeins of sport and DK and worsted and bulky yarns, but not enough to be able to put together in a way that I liked in a sweater. But once I actually went through and pulled out the different baskets and things where I keep my yarn, I realized that I had just enough different colors of DK weight yarn to pull together in this fabulous sweater. Sorry if there's rattling against the chair. I've got some needles hanging off this. So the sweater is knit top down. It's kind of a little bit more of a cropped style. And then the sleeves, there's a little bit of color work on the sleeves. The majority of the sleeves will be the main color, which is this, and then a little bit of color work on the cuff. So I'm knitting the sleeves, doesn't look like it right now. I'm knitting them 2 at a time on 2 circular needles. Never in my life have I knit on 2 circular needles. I know that a lot of people do that for socks. I had no idea how it worked. I never understood. Googled it really quick and was like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, I'll do this. Excuse me. Because I tried in another sweater to knit them 2 at a time magic loop and gave up after 1 round. That was not going to happen. But when I knit a sweater flat, like this sweater, which by the way, this is my Stonecutter sweater by Michelle Wong. When I knit this sweater, the sleeves are knit flat, so I knit them 2 at a time, and that was really easy. I like to do that to make sure they're the same size, because if I do not knit my sleeves 2 at a time, they will come out different lengths. And it helps them to go faster, because then when one is done, they're both done. So far that's working out really well. I did the first section of color work on the 2 circular needles, but then I just got to doing more intense color work, and it was just really tricky to manage the 4 skeins of yarn hanging off the needles, so I moved one of the sleeves onto double pointed needles. This is like the last color work section until it's just knitting in the main color. So I'll finish this color work section, go over here, finish this one, and then put it back on the 2 circular needles and finish off the sleeves that way. So the yarns that I'm using, I forgot to bring out the paper where I have them all written. I believe I have most of my yarn labels. Alright, so we'll try to get through this. So it is kind of a mixture. Some of them are sports, some are DK. I think I even have one that's a worsted weight in here. But that's okay. For whatever reason, combining like a fingering weight and a sport weight in a project, I'm like, I would absolutely never do that. But then, for whatever reason, DK to me seems to be very much in flux. I'm like, oh, sport is practically DK. Oh, worsted isn't that much bigger. It's basically the same thing. It isn't, but I pretend it is in projects like this. So, sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so tickle in my throat. Okay, so the main color is from Barrett Wool Co. It's their Wisconsin Woolen Spun. Now, if you remember in my last episode, I was talking about a shawl that I was knitting with this yarn in a different color. So I received this, it was given to me, I received it at the same time. And apparently it does not exist, cannot find a record of it anywhere, of them making a DK weight yarn. My guess is it was for a limited edition kit. That's my guess. So I'm using this color, I'm pretty sure this is their Pebble colorway. I'm like 95% sure you can get this colorway in their other weights. So it's 100% American wool, DK weight yarn. And this is really the yarn that when I remembered I had this, I was like, okay, I can make this work. I have enough of a main color, I can do this sweater. So that is the main color. And then there's this green color, which is some hand spun, which was also given to me. I've got this kind of tealy color, is Green Mountain Spinnery Mountain Mohair. And then this yarn is from On the Round, blanking on the colorway name. I used it to make a hat for my sister, and this is the leftover. Then this blue is Blacker Yarns Brushwork, one of their birthday yarns they did a couple years ago that was also given to me. The person who gave it to me realized they really couldn't wear mohair next to their skin, so they were wonderful enough to pass it on to me. So that's this yarn. Then I've got a light gray in here that's Quince & Co. Chickadee that Sarah gave to me. Sarah, I just want to tell you, if I ever mention you in my house, which does happen, you're Sarah, my knitting friend from Utah. It's like, that's your name, just so you So I met Sarah at Rhinebeck last year, and she gave me some skeins of Quince & Company because she knows of my undying love for Quince & Company yarns. And then this green, oh man, ugh, I don't have the ball band, but it's a British wool that was given to me during the Get Your Yarn Wishes Granted event that kind of happens spontaneously somehow every year around the holiday season. So that came from Elise. And then I think, then I have this kind of medium gray that's here and here is from the Little Grey Sheep. It's their British Hampshire double knit base. I have a couple colors of it, but some of them are really similar, so I don't necessarily want to use them together. So I'm using one of them in here. So I love that I managed to pull together all these odds and ends that kind of go together, and that so many of them were given to me or are left over, like this one left over from a project that I gave to someone. So it just makes it a really special sweater. It's very addicting, and I'm having so much fun working on it. It's basically has consumed me and my knitting life until I started the test knit because, I should actually finish it. Sometime. It'll happen sometime. It's fun. I'm an accountant. We're used to deadlines. It's all good. So I think that is all that I've been working on. Oh, I forgot. I was just looking at my Ravelry project page just to make sure that I remembered everything. I forgot. I had named this one. I knew I had, and I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. But I named this shawl my Mr. Wiss shawl. I was working on this. I cast this on while I was rereading The Blue Castle by Lucy Maud Montgomery. I tend to read it every year. I love that book so much. And Mr. Wiss is the island where the main character lives. And so there's a lot of descriptive passages in the book about Mr. Wiss and the water all around it and living in the woods. So that's what I named that shawl. I knew it had a name. The last project that I want to talk about. It's a tough topic, but I don't necessarily have very cohesive, well-formed thoughts to just say really nicely. So we'll see how this goes. If any of you are on Instagram and are part of the knitting world on there, you know that there has been just a really big discussion going back to the beginning of this year mostly. I know there were discussions previously, but that was when it really exploded, about the presence of racism within the knitting community. Obviously there's racism in the world all around us. We're still all people existing in the world that are part of this knitting community. And so there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of hard things brought up, things that I'm trying to work on in my own life. And I've been trying to support people that are doing good work and are basically that are doing anti-racism work, or who are anti-racist, who are active in being inclusive and diverse. So that's something that I've been working on. I don't talk about it a lot. I don't really post on Instagram a whole lot, so it's not something that I'm verbalizing much on Instagram, but it's something that I'm always thinking about. And when I'm making yarn and pattern purchases now, I'm trying to be much more conscious of who I'm supporting when I buy those things. So I forget when exactly this was, but there have also been some really prominent white women in this industry that people have been calling for them to change their behavior to address these topics, and a lot of them either have not, or will kind of make one post and then never say anything ever again. But there was attention was called to the fact that Caitlin Hunter of Boyland Knitworks had blocked a woman of color who was very active in doing anti-racism work. Had never interacted with this particular woman, hadn't done anything, but just blocked her. When the woman confronted her, Caitlin got very defensive, didn't want to listen to her, and then has continued to block other women of color who have called her out for this. So anyway, so I found out about this through somebody else sharing the story. Because for whatever reason, a lot of prominent industry leaders, their posts don't often show up in my Instagram feed. Don't know why. So I hadn't seen any of Caitlin Hunter's posts. So if you've watched this podcast for any length of time, I have knit. You know that I've knit a bunch of her patterns. I gush about them. I have had one on the needles almost consistently for a year. But I have decided that for the time being, I am not going to continue to support her. I'm not going to buy her patterns or continue to knit any of her patterns. I'm still going to keep the sweaters that I have. It's not the sweater's fault. The sweater didn't do anything. I'm the one, I picked out the colors, I made modifications, I'm the one who actually did the work to create the sweater. So obviously I'm still going to wear them. I'm not going to wear them to knitting events. I can wear it to work. Nobody at work has any idea where it's from. So, I can wear it to work or anything like that. But just for me, I've been trying to support different people who are designing patterns. There are tons of other people making beautiful colorwork patterns. So I had been working on a Maritimo tee by her. And I have decided that I am going to frog this sweater and knit the yarn into a different top. Because I love this yarn. I want to be able to talk about it and share it, but I don't feel comfortable doing that anymore because of her actions. So I'm about halfway through. So I will be frogging this, and I've been looking at a whole bunch of patterns. I haven't completely decided what I'll use this yarn for next, but I have a bunch of patterns saved on Ravelry that have the yardage, have two colors, use the same yardage, so it's just a matter of deciding which one I want. So I'm going to frog this sweater. Because like I said, I love this yarn. The yarn is from 6 and 7 fiber, the same dyer behind the mini skeins in my wrap. And this is her puff sleeves colorway and her Matthew and Marilla colorway. I also purchased on a Ravelry D-Stash a skein of hers. It was one of her 2018 Yarn Club colorways. I haven't totally decided. The purples are a little bit different. So the purple from the Yarn Club colorway is just a brighter shade of purple than the puff sleeves. So I haven't totally decided if I'm going to use these together, but I could. That is an option. I may actually swatch and see how they look together. We'll see. So I was stuck on this. I didn't know it took me a while to decide, to come to the decision to frog it, to decide what I was going to do about it. So that's why I cast on my Brave Era pullover so quickly, because I like to always have a garment on the needles, and it was a colorwork pattern, and I really wanted to be knitting some colorwork, so that was also part of why I cast that one on so quickly. So yeah, there are tons of amazing designers out there that I can support instead. I had already been thinking that I wanted to try to diversify the pattern designers that I was knitting their designs anyway. So it's just a good timing. It's prompting me to actually do that, to do some research about some different patterns, because I want to knit some more short-sleeved garments and sweaters, because I work in an office now, so I can actually wear knitwear to work. I'm trying to focus more on lighter weight sweaters, like fingering weight and short sleeved. That being said, I am knitting a DK weight long sleeve sweater. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but I do want some more short sleeve sweaters, which is why I cast on the Maritimo. But there are lots of other patterns out there that I can look at and knit something else with that yarn. So I think that's everything. Starting to get a little bit cold out here, so I suppose we can wrap it up. So I just wanted to say thank you again for stopping by, for watching all of this. It's been fun to be able to sit down again and chat about what I'm knitting and what I'm making, what I'm thinking. So I would love to know what you have been making lately, whether it's knitting or anything else that you've been working on. So go ahead and chat with me down below. I always reply to comments, so you can just let me know what you're working on, what you're making, what your favorite yarn is right now, whatever you want. I want to know what you're making, so you can comment down below. So I hope that wherever you are able to make a little bit of time today to create, whether it's knitting, drawing, spinning, whatever it is that you love to do. I hope that you find some time to do that today. Until next time, goodbye from me.